So if you're competing just on flight time, you're kind of going to a deli counter and taking a ticket and going, I'm just going to wait my turn, right? But if I'm dating the guy's sister that works behind the deli counter, I'm not taking a ticket when I show up, right? I'm just going to give him a wave from the back and he knows my order. And it's not quite that easy, right? But the reality is you have to break that, that chain. You have to step out of that deli counter line.
This is the 21.5 Show.
You're on 121.5, the emergency frequency.
Whether you're a professional pilot or want to be one, you're in the right place.
Let's get started.
Join professional aviators Dylan and Max as they talk their experience in the airlines, business aviation, and more.
Life is good.
Industry experts, unique stories, and plenty of fun. This is the 21.5 Show.
Here we go.
I thought you had the perfect intro.
Oh, all right, fine.
I thought you were doing it.
Okay.
I was like,
all right, Max. He is no longer with the FAA, but he's still here to help. It's James. Onieal, welcome back.
Actually, that is correct. I appreciate that, man. Now everyone's like,
Yeah.
afraid of me.
Exactly. Welcome,
he
James.
has stowed the khaki pants in the lanyard, folks.
But he's still got the
have.
tactical turtleneck. He's still got the
I
turtleneck.
do.
He's
right
he's
here.
ready to rock.
He's got the turtleneck on. It's business time.
It is business time, James. We need your help. We've got to look at another crazy year on the airline hiring roller coaster. We've had ups, we've had downs, and now we need to know what is going to happen in 2025. Welcome back, my friend.
Dude, thanks for having me. I just got back from the West Coast, so it's nice to be back in snow. You know what I'm saying?
Is it?
No, but I needed to make myself feel good about it.
That's
so.
right.
The 2025. Okay, so it's interesting, right? Because when we were going into the fourth quarter, when we going into the fourth quarter of 2024, a lot of folks were like, okay, hey, after the new year, hiring's going to be going crazy, and that wasn't ever going to happen, because the dynamics of what's going in the market aren't changing. I know it probably feels like it was a decade ago, but a year ago we were still a year and 3 or 4 months ago, we were still in the middle of that kind of like rapid hiring pace. And then we started to see, as we were going into the holidays of 2024, it started to slow down a bit. We weren't saying anything publicly about it yet because it was unclear as to what was a trend and what was new. And then you had the Boeing issues with the Max again, and it just kind of crumbled from there. And so that created two main issues that everybody is still trying to dig themselves out of. So the first is the airlines overhired. And I know people can go, well, how could that have happened? Well, hiring is done based on trends. So if you're putting, think about at the height of the hiring, 2021, 2022, 2023, United, Delta, and American were putting in the neighborhood of 200 people per month per carrier in class. So you were 600 to 700 pilots per month just between United, Delta, American. And then if they offered 300 people a job offer to get 200 people to show up, right? They had numbers that they had, you can back that up from there. Okay, well, if I need to offer 300 people a job, then if I have a 60% pass rate on my interview, right, then I've got to do something like 500 interviews per month. Well, that becomes a freight train rolling down the tracks, right? You don't just stop that overnight. The 737 issue with Alaska Airlines, nobody expected that. It wasn't like somebody could see that coming. And so when you started to run into delivery issues, right, they still had this freight train of hiring rolling down the tracks where they'd offered all these jobs to these people. Like, think about, you have, and I'm coming up with an an example number. This isn't like an exact it's not an exact number, but it gives you kind of the idea of, if the recruiters knew, hey, I got to offer 300 people a class date to get 200 to show up, right? Well, guess what? They've got a large pool of people that are sitting there. That's why midpoint in 2024, you saw basically American and United pull back even interviewing, right? So you had a long stretch of time in 2024 where they weren't even bringing people in, basically. Fast forward to today, and look, of course, you can call up United, Delta, American and ask them how many people they have in their pools. They're not going to tell you, right? But you can run some math. When we take a look at clients that we've worked with and what date they interviewed and what date they were offered a conditional job offer and what date they're starting class and how many of those people there are, and you're running somewhere around 5, maybe 600 pilots per legacy carrier that are sitting in a pool waiting to start a class date. Think
Per
about
carrier.
that.
Per carrier?
Per carrier, right? So, like I said, those are estimates. It's not like they're going to come out and go, hey, here's the deal. But we've got people, I'll use American as an example, where they got an interview and a job offer in whatever February or March or 2024, and they're starting class in January, right? You can run the number out where you take a look at, how many clients are, and you can run some rough math, and you go like, I don't know, 400, 600, 5, like it's in that range. It's not 100. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay.
Wait, I have a question real quick about that. So if you're at a carrier and they have this pool, right, of people that are hired that have not been invited to come to class yet, and as the pilots that come through their version of whatever ab initio type training program they have, and those pilots mature to then they're ready to come up to American or United or whatever, do they cut in front of the people that are in the pool, or do they get behind them, you think? Or do you know?
That is a great question.
That's why I asked it, James.
And so there's a couple of trends that we're seeing. So number one, it's not standard across the board. So each carrier is doing it a little bit differently. So certain carriers are basically pulling the people out of the pool in chronological order, meaning let's say the three of us go into an interview and Dylan gets a job offer first, Max gets a job offer second, James gets a job offer third, then Dylan's going to get a class date first, Max is going to get a class date second, James is going to get a class date third. Certain carriers are, Dylan got the job first, Max got the job second, James got the job third. But we all agree James is way better looking, way more intelligent, and way more skilled than the two of you. So I go to class first, and then Dylan goes second, and Max goes third, right? So not everybody is pulling everybody in chronological order.
Mm.
So that's number one. Number two, we have seen a definitive increase in folks coming through the traditional pathway programs. But if you think about it, everyone knew over the past 3 years when these carriers were coming out and saying the fastest path to XYZ legacy is our XYZ program. Everybody knew that wasn't true, right? In fact, if you went to their flow program, it was going to slow you down. Well, they needed a situation like this to right that ship. Because at the end of the day, right, it benefits a legacy carrier to develop you through their farm league and bring you up. So if you think about it, the three of us decide to start a legacy airline, right? And we have a choice. We can hire a pilot that is an unknown after we've done what amounts to be a 1-hour interview, or we can hire a pilot that we put through our pipeline program, and they've been in that program for 2 or 3 years, and I'm watching, are they showing up on time? Are they having any disciplinary issues? What are their check rights? Like, I can get all this data on you so that by the time you come to my front door, right, I have a very clear picture of who you are. The danger of that, though, is the carriers have been changing the terms for their programs. I have had direct clients that have reached out. I was accepted into the umpty-ump program, and then a year in, they changed the terms and kicked me out.
Wow.
So you get in. So, people are thinking like, oh, hey, this flow through program, it gives me a guaranteed X. It doesn't. They can kick you out of the program. Um, and one I remember off the top of my head was, uh, I want to say it was like when they got into the program, the max amount of check ride failures you could have was two, and they had two, and they disclosed it properly. But then a year later, they changed it and they said, no, you can only have one. They didn't fail any additional check rides between when they got accepted into the program and when they were in the middle of the program, right? They didn't lie about it. They disclosed it. It was talked about during the entire process, right? But they just decided, hey, we're going to change terms of the agreement. And now guess what? You're not in the program.
Wow.
So these programs are going to increase in popularity because they have the ability to take a certain amount of flow from those folks now, and now they can make it look like the fastest way to XYZ airline is through this flow program, right? Okay, so that's number one, which really is about increasing their recruiting at their regional carriers,
Well,
right? And
the only one that I have a soda straw view here of the whole thing, and that's to the Southwest program. And I'm not involved with it. I don't even know anybody who's really involved with it, but I know just from what I hear people talking about when I go to training, and a lot of captains that have their kids in that program talk about it. But and what we see on the communication, but they've actually remained, I guess I wouldn't say surprisingly loyal, because Southwest has always kind of have honored their commitments, like the people that had class dates after 9/11. They said, no, we offered you a class date, we're going to run the class, and they're doing that with these 225 people. That those are the only people that are new pilots running through training, are all 225 cadets at Southwest right now. There's nobody else, and that's because they're honoring whatever the agreement and what they made. And even though we probably don't need those pilots right now, they've matured through the program and did their part of the deal. And so Southwest is doing their part, which is interesting because they don't have, like backfilling the regional or any of that other dynamic that some of the other airlines have. But it's just interesting to see that, like, they've, while there's, we always talked about this, there was never a guarantee from the airline. It was like, yeah, if you do this, we're going to do this, but there's no guarantee of us doing our part. And they've done their part, which I've been pretty impressed with. But I was just kind of curious, too, like what you've seen with the other carriers, if they're, how they're holding up their end of the bargain, because I'm sure that will vary carrier to carrier.
yeah, so look, any of these programs, it's that Dumb and Dumber meme that I always use with the IOU, right?
Yeah.
That's a big one. You might want to hold on to that. Okay. So, first thing is, what you're talking about there with Southwest, that's a culture thing. And, the difficulty is, look, you get to see, it's really easy to sit back and crap on recruiters and crap on the companies and crap on the contracts. But if you take a look at what pilots did over the past 3 years, they behave the exact same way and worse in some cases. So you get to see who people really are in the extreme good times and the extreme bad times, right? When there's no barrier put on your value system, do you live by it? And I know a lot of people are going to go, I would never do that. You're like, okay, well, really everybody that had the chance was doing it, right? And I don't say that in terms of like you should or shouldn't have done it. I mean, the pilots had a basically 20-year history of the airlines holding a boatload of power and wielding that a certain way. When there was that gap over 2 or 3 years, most people started to get the feeling of like, this is a narrow window. I've got to get through this and get there. And they did that, right? But there's ramifications for that now because pilots that are coming through are now paying the toll
For
for
the
all
people
of
ahead of
those
them.
guys that went over the bridge for free,
Yep.
right? Okay. So this is where we take a look at culture because it matters. And I know people tend to look at culture only when there's down times, right? But the reality is you can take a look at a place like Southwest where you say, hey, look, they're honoring their word. Yeah. And look, I don't mean any disrespect to Southwest, but the biggest complaint that we get is it's not sexy enough, right? You're not doing any wide body internet. You're flying a 7.3 domestically. Yeah, and I get it. But the thing is, you're putting your family's future inside the hands of these executives in this company. How much do you want to know how much they follow their word? Now, on the Destination 225 program, yes, they are taking in candidates, but you're talking like 7, 8 a month. They're not filtering in 50, 60, 8. Like there's not a large quantity of candidates. And look, I don't have any direct numbers on this, but there is a large portion of people in that 225 program where their family member already works at Southwest. So there's a high degree of loyalty amongst the candidates and amongst the company. Um, so I think that's something to be aware of. The other thing is when you take a look at a United, when you take a look at a Delta, when you take a look at American, right? So I've given you the one side of the fence where, hey, the rules have changed. But the other side of the fence to look at is they are very large, very complicated carriers, right? And so as they go through these programs and they bring people in the door, they start to see who is and is not successful. That's what's actually dictating the change in the programs. It's not like somebody's coming down with a magic wand and saying, hey, you know what? Boom, we don't like this many check ride failures. So what that means is, as a pilot, you do have somewhat of a say in terms of what happens to your buddy coming in that pipeline ahead of you, right? If people have 3 check ride failures, but they have a 90% pass rate when they go to the legacy, guess what? 3 check ride failures is the number. But if somebody with 2, if all of a sudden they're taking a look at, and I've talked to recruiters at, let's take these legacy airlines and put them aside, right? Whole bunches of companies. Folks don't realize the hiring is not just dictated by the recruiters. Training and safety are involved as well. They're watching what types of pilots with what backgrounds are having difficulties in what segments of the training. And they're using that to dictate those. That's where those competitive minimums come from. That's why people can get around competitive minimums. Because if you network and you can prove, hey, you're not going to have those problems, that's where that kind of sliding in through the side door comes in. But from the airline's perspective, it's not personal. It's we're going to dump 50, 60, 70, 80 grand into your training. I need a reasonably high guarantee that you're going to make it through. And the amount of people that have been terminated in the last year is staggering. For not only failing training, for personality issues in the cockpit, for making bad decisions on the line, for friggin' texting on, while you're taxiing out. Like I give you a whole bunch of silly stories, but the carriers are watching that. So everybody's got to kind of like up the professionalism and the standard right now, right? If you want to maintain a nice even flow into those carriers. And I know that can sound a little existential, but it's true.
Okay, so we've got a few folks in these programs moving through at a couple of the carriers. We've got somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 pilots swimming in the pool right now, in the hiring pool. What about the people that are sitting there that don't even have a job offer right now, that have, I've got my time. We got one question from a listener who said, look, is turbine PIC going to be a thing again? Like, am I going to need 1,000 turbine PIC to be competitive? What about all the people that don't even have a job offer? What do you think 2025 is going to bring for those folks?
So if you are competing on flight time, you're losing the battle. Because there's too many people with too much flight time right now. And so I want you to imagine.
Wait. What is too much flight time these days, James? Because too much flight, that's a very subjective
number.
Love
too much.
Yeah.
Too much time.
So what I mean by too much flight time is, so here's how competitive minimums work, right? The carriers, right, are getting, I've talked to really, really small 135 operators, right? And I've talked to really, really, really big, major companies. And you're seeing on like a really, really small scale, like a company that you would think like, I'd never want to work there. They're getting 250 resumes a week, right? You're having other places that are getting upwards of 1,000 a week, new ones. So now you go online and you see, oh, okay, you need to have 2,500 hours total time. That's great. That's the minimum. But when they go into their application system and they go, show me all the people who have 2,500 hours, and it goes 10,000 applications, they're going to go, give me 3,500, give me 4,500. They're going to keep upping that number, right? Until they get to a point to where you hit too much flight time, and then they start wondering, hey, can you learn new tricks? Right? So there's a window. Then they go in. Oh, that's where things like, do you have a master's degree? Do you, whatever, right? Do you have turbulent PIC time? How many type ratings do you have? What, like, competitive minimums are dictated by what pops up in the system when you dump it into the algorithm. It's not like an AI scoring system that's going like, this is the perfect pilot. They're literally going in and going, what narrows this down to a competitive set of pilots? If if you go in and go, show me people that have 3 check ride failures or less, and it shows you 10,000 candidates, and you go 2 or less, 1 or less, none. That's how that's kind of being figured out. But that doesn't take into account the humanity of who you are. That doesn't take into account your soft skills. It doesn't take into account any of that stuff, right? So if you're competing just on flight time, you're kind of going to a deli counter and taking a ticket and going, I'm just going to wait my turn, right? But if I'm dating the guy's sister that works behind the deli counter, I'm not taking a ticket when I show up, right? I'm just going to give him a wave from the back, and he knows my order. And it's not quite that easy, right? But the reality is, you have to break that chain. You have to step out of that deli counter line. Now, yes, your resume has to be squared away. There's lots of ways that when we go through and we fill out the applications for folks that we get in the soft skills and other things. But that's not going to get you selected. That's there so that after you get the networking done and they drive someone to go into that application, the person in the application is now looking for these things and they can find them. The worst thing you can do is network, right? Get somebody to do you a solid, right? They call up somebody on the inside, and then they go and pull up the app or the resume, and the person at XYZ company goes, yeah, we're not going to bring him on because of this. And I've had clients call up, hey, I have a buddy. They're on the hiring team. They called up so-and-so. They went into my application. They found these 7 things. Like, yeah, man, if we were able to get that done before. So now they're calling us like, hey, can you fix it? And by all means, we can. But imagine how much more effective that could have been if we had fixed it before that had happened, right? Because when you're going to a head of hiring, I don't care if it's the smallest 135 operator in the country or it's any one of the 3 legacy airlines. They are busy. They've got a lot of stuff going on. When you capture their attention, you've got 7 seconds. If they take 5 minutes of their time to go in and look at your buddy's application, and they go in and they come back to you and go, hey, yeah, these 17 things are wrong, it's not good. Now you got to go back and try and recapture their attention again and go, hey, can you spend another 5 minutes of your time going through this and checking to make sure he fixed the problems that he fixed, plus did all these other, you don't want to be there. You want to give them, you want to give them a product that looks good. And look, I've got plenty of stories that I'm not going to share publicly of networking.
Come on, just one. Just one. Do you mind just
tactics one? that folks have used recently, where they've leveraged buddies who use some very creative ways to grab the attention of a decision maker. And it works. And these folks have gotten interviews and gotten job offers for jobs that either weren't posted anywhere or they wouldn't have gotten had that person not made that introduction or that phone call for them. But you don't want to have your friend set you up for a blind date and then you show up in sweatpants. You can't recover easily from a first impression like that.
Yeah.
You don't, right? Your friend sets you up with like the
ask Dylan how he knows.
Yeah, exactly. Get Dylan's wife on the line.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
what's up, guys?
You don't want to have your buddy set you up with a on a blind date with the prom queen and you show up with sweatpants in a car that's broken down. It's not going to go well.
So, okay. So what about the folks, they're sitting there and they're still saying like, what's going to, let me rephrase this question. A few years ago, I want to say when the legacy started hiring, I'm going to say maybe like 2015, 2016, when the hiring was starting to pick up. I remember the first year it was like, well, check airmen get hired and chief pilots and kind of the cream of the crop get hired. And then my buddies and I joked that I think it was like 2017 or 2018 was the year of the dude. And that's when just dudes got hired, right? Like just
Yeah.
regular line pilot guy. Could 2025 be the year of the dude? Or are we still, is 2025 going to be, you need to be dating the deli counter guy's sister type deal? What do you see? Like, how far away are we from dudes getting hired again?
2025 is going to be, at least for half the year of people from 2024 starting class.
Okay.
Right. So that's the big misconception that folks have right now. And if you think about it from a candidate's perspective, this change has happened very rapidly. So it's not like people are stupid, right? It's just the change has been so dramatic. And you're going from 700 pilots hired a month at the legacies to like 60, 70 hired per month at the legacies.
Well, that's the question. So the people that are awaiting class, are they of that experience level when things were cranking on all cylinders, like of the young, early mid 20s with barely ATP? But so are they going to get hired when the competitive minimums, are now, like, is that what you mean when they're reshuffling the pool based on experience or how they scored in the interview or whatever?
Yeah. So a lot of
it changed so fast. Yeah.
So right now, on average, you're seeing anywhere from 6 to 12 months for people to start class at the larger carriers. Right. Regionals, depending on which one, are a little bit faster, but even some of those, I mean, I've got folks at SkyWest that have been waiting really long periods of time. So if you go back, let's call it 6 to 12 months, right? A lot of the people that are in the pool now were the ones that were coming into the pool as that slowdown was starting towards the end of 2023. That's really who that is. Okay. Competitive minimums are up. You're going to start seeing turbine PIC time becomes a thing again. If you're looking at an entry level job, you're going to start taking a look at more people are showing up with their ATP, CTP complete or their ATP in hand. Multi-engine time is going to become more competitive. Check ride failures are going to be harder to overcome. They're not unovercomable. I don't know if that's a word. I don't know why I'm a resume writer. But you're not going to see people with 9 check ride failures, right? Going to major carriers unless their dad's, I guess, a chief pilot or I don't know. But like, you're not going to see that type of stuff happening. Not in 2025. Also, hey, by the way, as everyone's writing these things down, my crystal ball is in the shop. So, little latitude on this. But no, you're going to see the more traditional hiring where, folks have, let's call it 1,000 hours of at least SIC time, 500,000 hours of turbine PIC time. You're going to start seeing things like check airman becoming more competitive, lead captain if you're a part, 91 or 135. Simulators, instructors, ground instructors, folks that are volunteering on hiring committees, people that are volunteering on safety committee, like they're going to be looking for not only inside the cockpit but outside the cockpit type things. You're seeing, at the major legacy level, probably closer to 5,000 hours being more competitive. Take that with a grain of salt. You have your military pilots are not showing up at 5,000 hours, right? I mean, so those are straight kind of civilian numbers. If you're going to a corporate operator, you're going to have to really be able to answer in an interview, why do you want to work here? You're really going to have to be able to hit the mark on customer service type questions, right? You're really, corporate's different than the airlines in that you don't have that support structure behind you. You don't have a flight attendant. I understand guys flying Gulfstreams and stuff, but let's be honest, nobody's coming straight into a Gulfstream, right? They're going into a King Air, they're going into a Pilatus, they're going into a Citation, they're going into a Challenger. Right? You don't have a flight attendant. You don't have a gate agent. Sometimes you only have a flight follower. You don't have a dispatcher, right? Depending on the size of the company. So when you go into these interviews, you've got to know more about the company and you've got to be able to demonstrate some of those soft skills and hey, why do you want to be here? So it's changing on many different levels. And once again, that's why the folks that we're working with we're spending so much time on the networking because things are changing on an ongoing basis. And so if you've got your network dialed in and you know the right questions to ask, you're showing up to the interview with a disproportionate amount of knowledge so that you know culturally what they're looking for, what people are getting dinged for, what people are making it through for. And you're playing by a different set of rules.
Okay, so to summarize, 2025, not the year of the dude.
No. No.
Well, I wonder. Yeah, and we may not see the year of the dude for quite some time.
Well, the
It's
the other thing, and this one is probably going to get us canceled, so I apologize. But you're going to see changes in the language they're using around diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yep.
And I'm not getting into good versus bad. I'm
It's
talking
just
about
as a whole, it's on the decline now.
if you take a look at what the recruiting departments are talking about and what they are and are not celebrating, you're going to see a shift. Does that mean that companies are actively moving away from somebody that would normally fit into a diversity, equity, and inclusion segment? No, but recruiting departments are shifting some of their training and language around that. And there's some difficulties I think that some of the different places experienced in terms of when you increase your diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? What you're effectively saying is, I want to bring in people with different perspectives, different ideas, different ways of doing things, right? Because those differences in perspective, we believe are going to make our service experience, the solutions that we come up with better. The difficulty is when you increase your diversity, equity, and inclusion, you also increase your conflict, right? Anytime you want to bring in diverse perspective, what you're saying is we want to have conflict, right? But we believe that that conflict is going to lead us to a better place. But it doesn't do that if you don't have training programs in place to help people learn how to navigate that new type of conflict. And so what we saw was companies increasing their diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? But they weren't increasing the infrastructure on the back end to support that at the same rate. Now, to their defense, as you're increasing your diversity, equity, and inclusion, you don't necessarily know the problems you're going to be running into. You don't know where the conflict's going to be popping up, right? But that created some real issues where people were brought in, and depending on what culture you're coming from, how directly or indirectly you handle conflict is going to change. Whether you back down, whether you take a more assertive stance, what language you use, it's all going to be different. So I would suspect that you're going to see some difference on the diversity, equity, and inclusion language that recruiting departments are using. I would also be prepared if I was in networking engagements and in interviews, because of what's happened over the past couple of years, really being able to talk through how you handle and navigate conflict. Because you are going to be working with people that come from different backgrounds and different experience sets than you do. And it's been a little bit of a brutal process over the past couple of years of folks not being able to navigate that conflict well. So just keep that in mind.
That's really good perspective. I haven't really heard
I
anyone
thought about that.
articulate that like you just did.
Well, so the reason why I can articulate it this way is because a lot of the folks, when they were having problems, would call us, right? They would have a friend or somebody that knew who we were, and they would refer them to us. It hurts when somebody calls up and you find out, okay, so you ever see two people in a conflict and you can see what their intention was versus what was creating the conflict because there was a misunderstanding, right? So we'd be in the middle of a situation like that, and now the person's having to figure out, hey, how do I protect myself? How do I back out of this? Meanwhile, the recruiting department's perspective is, hey, man, we got plenty of people in the pipeline. If we lose you, we lose you. So if you're someplace where you're on probation, you don't have union protection. And depending on whether they view it as more difficult to work with you through that problem, right? Or easier to let you go, they're going to choose accordingly. Um, and so folks don't realize that. So they get into these conflicts not realizing, hey, dude, you're walking down into a volcano that's about to erupt. You're not on a mountain hike. And it becomes very difficult to help navigate that because you're navigating cultural expectations and cultural differences. So if anyone out there is thinking about what types of things they would want to talk about in networking or what types of things they'd want to prepare for an interview, asking what types of conflicts they're running into on the road, how do you guys handle those conflicts, what things are available at your disposal, better prepares you when you're having networking conversations with folks and better prepares you when you walk into interviews to navigate these landmines. Because you'll see it in the questions that they're asking, that they're searching for how you handle that stuff.
Interesting.
Let's take a quick break from our conversation with James to talk about the absolute legends at Advanced Aircrew Academy, longtime sponsors of the show. You know them. Aircrewacademy.com. All of the training programs they have are on their website. It is the one-stop shop for your flight department's educational needs. And did you know they're part of the training program support package through USAIG's Performance Vector Safety Initiative? If your insurance is through USAIG, and a lot of our insurance is in business aviation, there are free tools you can take advantage of in that Performance Vector package. And the training program support package is part of it. You can get the training your flight department needs, all covered through your insurance. What a deal. Visit aircrewacademy.com to get more information. All right, back to the show. Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit, James. This is going to be rapid fire. We'll do a little role playing for 2025. I'm gonna give you a few different pilots in different parts of their career. Quickly give just a couple pieces of advice for everyone at a different stage here and what they should do in 2025, where it sounds like things are not going to be reaccelerating. How do you use your time wisely? Let's start with the CFI that's at 1,500 hours. So excited. I hit it. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to take the next step. Nobody's calling. I can't get an interview. I'm looking at signing a massive contract at SkyWest. What should I be doing right now while the phone is not ringing?
You've got to do something outside of the CFI. So the difficulty is when you're a 250 or 300 or 400 hour pilot and you start CFIing for that first 600 hours, it's actually making you a better pilot because you're learning how to teach, you're learning the maneuvers, so on and so forth. After that point, you're sitting within 25 miles of an airport, which means you probably don't know how to get a pushback clearance. You probably don't understand climb and descend via. You probably have never flown a departure or arrival procedure. You probably only have about 15 hours of multi-time, right? So you're coming in the door with a lot of experience within about 25 miles of an airport. Anything you can do, right, outside of the CFIing is helpful. A lot of folks are networking into doing right seat stuff in corporate. A lot of folks are getting involved in different volunteer organizations. I particularly like aviation stuff, right? So whether you want to get involved in one of the conference organizations or something like that, but you have to start putting yourself around other people that are doing the type flying that you want to do so you can start getting up to speed on those things. Because otherwise, you're showing up with, like I said, 80%, 90% of your flight time is within 25 miles of the airport you departed from. Aerial survey is a great one. I know that's hard to come by, but it's anything you can do outside of CFIing that's point-to-point flying is helpful.
All right, next one. I am a regional SIC. I've got maybe 5 to 100 to 1,000 SIC time now. I'm starting to get my feet wet, understanding the 121 operations. How do I prepare for the next step? Should I be thinking that I'm going to upgrade to captain at my regional, or should I still be thinking LCC, try and get out of my regional as quickly as possible? What do you think?
So if you're a regional first officer, there's two things that are holding those folks back. Number one is if you're not flying enough, right? So if you're either stuck in a base where the flight time isn't high enough, or basically not flying enough. The second aspect of it is not getting themselves ready for upgrade. So captain is not a first officer job 2 feet to the left, right? Um, all that time in cruise should be spent flipping through the book, studying, asking the captain questions. If we ran into this scenario, what would happen? If you had this, what would happen? In the past week, what problems did you run into? To get yourself mentally prepared. That way you can take that upgrade as soon as possible after reaching that 1,000 hours of 121 SIC time and put yourself on that trajectory to start building the flight time. It doesn't mean you're necessarily going to stay to the regional all the way until you get to a major, right? But the ability to pass that upgrade, not fail it, make it through IOE, and actually start building that turbulent PIC time is huge right now. So it boils down to studying, and it boils down to building the flight time.
Okay. I'm the regional captain now. The majors are not hiring me, but maybe I could get on at flying an Airbus at a low-cost carrier. Is it smarter for me to stay in the left seat at the regional, or should I just make a move for making a move's sake, even if it might not get me to my career job?
Yeah, so I like to swap the word captain out for mentor. And so you upgrade to captain, and if you think, hey, I'm just going to sit here in the left seat and I'm going to go build that time, initially that is actually what's needed, right? You're trying to get to that 500 or 1,000. So you're really probably not doing a ton of stuff outside the cockpit. You're just trying to get as much flight time as you can. As you get into that 500 to 1,000 range, you really have to start looking at what can I do outside of just the flying. And if you think about it, right, different organizations have different ways to do it, right? OVOP has their ACE Academy. You can go out and you can go volunteer, right? And now you're mentoring kids and you're also spending time around guys that are at the carriers that you want to go to. You're starting to learn the culture, you're starting to learn what's expected, you're starting to build relationships, so on and so forth. If you're going to just sit in the cockpit and just continue to build the flight time, you're going to watch 500, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. You're just going to keep racking up that flight time. So you have to get involved outside the cockpit and you have to put yourself in positions to demonstrate who you are as a person and how you work to other people that are at places you want to go. The reason volunteering is like giving mini free pizzas away at Costco. You could sit there and describe how great the pizza tastes, or you can just give them a little small slice for free and let them taste it. Volunteering is your opportunity to give them a taste of who you are for free. And it's a win-win-win-win-win. It's a win for you because you get to do something good. It's a win for the person that you're mentoring. They get to experience something that's going to help move them forward in their career. And it's great for companies because they get to see who you are and how you operate. That's why volunteering exists. You can go volunteer at the animal shelter if you want to, but you're not giving the carrier or the people that work at that carrier an opportunity to taste that mini free pizza.
All right, last one. I'm in the military. I'm getting ready to separate. A couple of years ago, my squadron buddies were getting hired pretty easily. There was rotor transition programs. There's a lot of gateways. Now it kind of seems like, man, should I stay in? Should I still separate? What do you advise to the armed services folks?
So it depends on what branch they're in, and it depends on whether they're fixed wing or rotary. So if you're an Air Force pilot that's coming out with 1,500 or 2,000 hours of heavy time, it's going to be a little bit different than if you're coming out as an Apache pilot with 750 hours total time. Some general rules of thumb to consider, right? 2 years out, you want to start taking a look at what's your GI Bill money going to look like? Are you going to be building some of that flight time while you're in the military? You're going to wait till you get out and do a rotary transition. Are you taking a look at doing a skill bridge, right? You're taking a look at different things like that to time that transition. We usually like to start working with folks between about a year and 2 years out. The further out we work with them on the transition, we come up with a transition plan. We can make 1-degree course corrections. The closer to their separation date, you're making 30, 40-degree corrections. It's a lot more painful the closer you get into the date. If you're on the lower end of the flight time scale, like restricted ATP 750,000 hours, some of the regionals could actually make sense. It depends on when you're getting out of the military. But if you take a look at how long it would take you to get a job with multi-engine turbine time someplace else versus going to one of the regionals with the contracts, depending on your family situation, where you live, how much you're going to fly, a couple of other factors, some of those regional if you sign them, if you get in early enough in the flight time game, could actually make sense. As you start increasing the flight time, 1,000 hours, 1,250, 1,500, 1,750, the regional contracts can start to make a little bit less sense. Um, if you're coming out fixed wing from the military, let's say a fighter guy or a heavy guy or a bomber guy, those opportunities that are available to you are a little bit different. United's UMPP, military pathway program, right? Just straight applying to a place like a Delta or an American, going to the conferences, doing the networking, taking a look at different corporate opportunities, um, will be available to you to come up with a little bit of a straighter progression, if that makes sense. So it's going to depend on how much time they're coming out with, how much of that is aircraft commander versus, SIC time. There's some dynamics in there, and whether or not it's fixed wing or rotary.
Okay, cool. All right, James, we do have some flight advice. A few listeners have written in seeking your wisdom. Okay, before we jump into flight advice, we've got to recognize our longtime sponsor of the flight advice segment. Of course, that's Harvey Watt, the go-to for insurance for professional pilots around the globe. Life insurance, loss of medical insurance. Harvey Watt has got you covered where it matters the most. You can visit their online tool and check out a quote for your loss of medical insurance. Even if your carrier already provides some type of insurance, it might not be enough for your family. Get all of the facts at harveywatt.com. All right, let's get on to flight advice.
Hi, gents. Longtime listener, first-time asker. I am a LCC first officer based in the Midwest with the goal of getting on with a legacy and preferably Delta. I have 1,700 hours total time, 650 hours, part 121 on the A320, and fly about 70 hours a month. Delta's preferred hiring mins are 2,500 total time and 1,000 hours turbine multi-engine time, not PIC necessarily, he says. I will have the opportunity to upgrade soon and wonder if I should pursue it or not. At my airline, being the lowest captain in seniority on reserve hardly provides the opportunity to fly. I'd estimate maybe 8 to 20 hours per month, and I will not move up in seniority anytime soon. Do I stay in FO and fly as much as I can to meet the 2,500 min for Delta, or upgrade, which also looks good on the resume, but then hardly fly and spend years working my way towards 2,500 total time? Ironically, I asked a Delta recruiter this exact question, and they did not give me any actionable advice. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on how valuable turbine PIC time is. Keep up the good work, gentlemen. Love the show. It slaps, and have to thank you because your episodes had a huge impact, motivating me to quit my old career and make the jump to aviation.
So, number one, he asked a really good question. And number two, the reason the recruiters probably didn't answer it is because that general advice everyone gives over turbine PIC time, right, is not actually really good advice. So let's talk about kind of what the pros and cons of this are. So he has two issues that he's going to run into simultaneously. Number one, not meeting the 2,500 hours total time, which if he doesn't meet the 2,500 hours total time, system's not going to accept him. So that's number one. Number two, if he's flying 8 hours per month, he's not going to hit 100 hours in a year. So he's going to get a double whammy, right? Not building towards that not hitting that 2,500, and then basically, I doubt he'll come in under 100 hours a year. But if it's questionable, you could run into an issue pretty quick. Okay, so becoming a captain is great. Turbine PIC time is great, but when you're that low time, you've got to think about how many. We don't know what's going to happen with Spirit, right? Spirit could come out of this a smaller, more aggressive airline. But if they don't, think about how many Airbus captains you have out on the street with thousands of hours of Airbus PIC time. Your 96 hours of Airbus PIC time in the past year is not going to be super valuable, nor is it going to distinguish you. So right now, and I want to be clear, right? What day is today? Today's January 5th that we're recording this. This advice could change in a month or 2 months or 3 months as the environment changes. This is why when we're working with folks, we're checking in with them constantly, right? We set a strategy, we move in a direction, but we constantly are adjusting that based on what's happening in the market. But based on today, right? Sunday, January 5th, 2025, Um, I would stick as the SIC and I would continue to build a flight time. When you hit the 2,500 hours, then I would take a look back at, okay, so if I held captain, even if I was on reserve, how much could I realistically fly? Could I get it to 30, 40, 50 hours a month? And then I would make my decision based on that. But I wouldn't hit myself right now, today, with a double whammy of I'm not progressing towards that 2,500. I mean, it'd be like 9 years. I know he's not only going
Yeah.
to fly 100 hours a year for 9 years, but it's almost like 9 years to get to that 2,500. Oh, and by the way, you're hitting the bare minimum of flight time per month, which, given how gun shy everybody is on check ride failures, they're not exactly going to be excited about that.
Not to mention, hey, you have 1,700 hours total time, and you've been in a legacy for a little while, or I mean, a low cost carrier for a while. Newsflash: there's a reason why you can hold captain. Nobody wants that. Like, that's
Yeah,
gonna
that's
be
a whole
your
different.
quality of life is gonna be absolutely awful. And there's a reason why why that exists.
Also, though, it says not married, no kids. So
Yeah.
that's easier to swallow that.
And then all he's got to add
Bullet.
is, and not planning on doing either of those soon.
Well, he does say, but it's funny because the second line does say getting married soon, kids in a couple years.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So
Go grind. Is there even, I just don't know the landscape of the low cost carriers right now. And I don't know if any of us would know, like, is there opportunities to fly a lot? Like, can you pick up time? Can you be really aggressive, or has the flying come down so much?
So let's talk about that real quick, because this exists outside low cost carriers, right? So everybody, most people call something and go, I'll do anything I need to get a job. And I will point to jobs and they go, I'm not going to do that. And you're like, well, why not? Well, I gotta move to Wyoming or Montana. And you're like, no, I know it's cold in the winter there. Yeah, I don't know if that's going to work for me, right? So everyone thinks, hey, look, I'll do whatever I need to get a job. But when the reality sets in of like, hey, here's the opportunity in front of you, in order to advance, it's an inverse relationship. If you want to advance very quickly, just take your quality of life and throw it into the toilet, right? If you want to maintain a high quality of life, you're going to slow down that advancement. It's a pretty straightforward formula. Now, there is a point in your career where that changes, right? But you've already suffered so much that it doesn't matter at that, right? You're getting to that, whatever, 8,000, 10,000, 15,000 hour point where you're like, okay, I've got enough different experience and enough different airplane types and enough different segments of the industry. I've got a lot of friends. We've been through ups and downs together. We've helped each other, right? Where, yes, you don't necessarily have to take as big of a hit to your quality of life as, to get that advancement or so on and so forth. But for the people that we're talking to that are looking to advance earlier on in their career, usually that advancement is going to come at a pretty substantial cost to either money or time. There's no way to do it comfortably. And
Max, what's the inspirational line you had for us this morning that you sent me?
Everybody likes the view. Nobody likes the climb.
That is, look, and the reality is, because I don't want to be in that like back in my day BS. None of us friggin' liked it when we were doing it either. It wasn't like I was like, oh, great character building. I just didn't have another choice, right? Or my other choice was so bad that's what you. So this isn't like.
How dare you shame your time with Chuck Colgan in the Saab 340? That was a great time. You take your words back.
When I went to Colgan, I remember having actually with a guy who's on my team at Raven. We've known each other for 25 years. I remember having conversations with him, and I was like, the only reason I'm going here is because it's such a horrible place to be that I can upgrade quick because everyone's leaving. That's why I went there. Like, I knew what I was getting into, but it was one of those. And when I say the schedule was horrible, you were based in places that nobody wanted to live. Like, it was, when you put the whole picture together, it was just not great. And so when I talk to people now, it's about balancing that out. But we didn't have Instagram when we were doing this. Nobody was showing you pictures of a perfect life going, hey, look, you can have 17 days off a month and make six figures and use your non-rev benefits on your day off to go camp in the mountains. Like, we knew it sucked. I mean, they're being bombarded with different information than we were.
Well, I think the difference too is what I've heard from from other people too is that a lot of the people in the last few years that have started to get into aviation said, hey, I think it's a good idea to become a pilot. They've done it a lot because they've seen the rapid progression, how quickly you can get to the top and make a good living and have a lot of days off. And it wasn't necessary for the love of flying, where I think there's a lot of people previously that were truly passionate about aviation. That's why they want to become pilots, because the climb was rough, dude. And like you said, like going to Colgan, and when we flew out of the regionals out of Chicago and commuted and all this, like it sucked. There was a lot that sucked, but at the end of the day, like I was still flying a jet around, and that was I loved that. Like there was that motivation deep inside of you that pushed through a lot of the suck to be able to do that. And I'm not sure as many people have that now. So when things are ripping, it's really not of consequence. But when things slow down and you have to go, load cargo in Gillette, Wyoming in January. To go fly at some clapped out Beach 99 in the ice and, fly approaches single pilot, like that might not be quite as attractive as it would have been if you were super passionate about what you were doing. Because I've like even flown with captains that are like, yeah, some of these new people, like they look around, they don't even know, like look at an airport. They have no idea what kind of airplane that is. Like they're just not, it's just not a thing. Like they're just not into it. They're like, I'm here for a very specific reason and goal, and that's to make money and have time off, and because it seemed like a pretty good thing to do at the time.
Yeah, so there are certainly people that fit into that category, but what I find is the more kind of pervasive is it's about expectations. So if I put you in a car, right, and the person driving the car is about to slam on the brakes, you have an expectation that that's going to happen, and you can brace yourself. But if I put you in a car and you're asleep, right, and I slam on the brakes, your face is going into the windshield because you weren't expecting that. You weren't braced for it. So these folks came into the industry and everything was up and to the right, right? And so the expectation was, hey, look, if I do these things, if I follow these rules, if I play by this playbook, XYZ is going to happen. Most people go into that knowing full well there's a chance that I'm not going to get 100% of that to work. What they weren't prepared for is 15% of it working. Right? So the change has been so rapid that it's disorienting. And now what I find is people are calling going, what am I doing wrong? Or what did I do wrong? And it's not so much about what did you do wrong. It's, hey, the playbook you were given, right? You were given a playbook for a football game. You're now on a soccer field. That playbook, great playbook in the NFL, but we're playing soccer right now. And so none of that applies.
Very little scoring.
Exactly, right? And so that's actually what's hitting them. The ones that really didn't want to be a pilot, that wanted to get in because they thought it was going to be a lot of money for not a lot of work, they're just going to wash out and leave the industry. Like they won't even CFI. And that's fine. But there's a much larger segment of people that are going, they keep flipping through the playbook going, maybe I'm just reading the play wrong. And you're like, no. Those are football plays. We're on a soccer field right now. And they're both grass. They both have metal poles at the end of them. They both have paint every couple of yards. I don't know how soccer works, or football for my European friends. So it's disorienting, and they're trying to figure out, where am I at on the map right now, and how do I pick up the pieces and move forward?
Yeah, I guess
that's
it's
the hard part.
It's a multifaceted thing
Yeah.
too. I mean, it's generational too, to an extent. There's a lot of things.
Well, the other thing too, we talked about, when you're a student, who is your mentor? Your mentor is your flight instructor. Okay.
Yes.
You saw your flight instructor go, probably, if you got into this a year or two ago, you watched your flight instructor at the best possible time to be a flight instructor, where it was boom, 1500, boom, regional, boom.
Yeah. You mean one of your many instructors that
right. You just saw this, all the people ahead of you, and you're like, oh, okay, there's the place.
People that went into the stock market during coronavirus.
Yeah,
Like, oh my God, they made 3,000%.
so easy.
Yeah, you're right. They were lucky. I mean,
Yeah. So it was just tough because you saw the people directly ahead of you, and now that's a different path. So
I just want to
But
pause for a second, though, because I got to point out the fact that James is basically an artist, and his canvas is the use of his metaphors. It's really inspiring sometimes.
Yeah.
His ability to illustrate a point through the use of a well-crafted metaphor
Mhm.
is really uncanny. I must congratulate you, James.
Yeah,
It's-
I
I appreciate that.
I mean,
It doesn't
Something
go
else.
well at home, just in case you're wondering.
yeah, I bet. Eileen,
I'd
this
like to-
dinner, let me just
Oh, your wife.
explain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. James, why haven't you
Um,
taken the trash out yet?
well, let me.
Eileen.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Uh,
The other thing to remember with folks right now, it's getting shoved in their face that everybody else is successful and they're not. I mean, if you go on social media, even if that person's life sucks, they're lying and making it look like it's beautiful. And it's just getting shoved in your face constantly. Hey, you're not successful. And that makes it difficult as well.
Yeah, and dude, I tell you, the people that I feel for are some of the military folks that are coming out of the military, and they've been in for a good chunk of time, 10 years minimum, right? And so they're older, and they're coming in, they see they're getting in line behind people that got hired at a certain time that were so much younger than them that are never going to get out of their way via
That is correct.
retirement. And that is a tough place to be. Like, I would be pissed if I got hired later behind people that were substantially younger than me. I'd be like, these guys, like, they're the plug. They're never going to move.
So it's
And-
interesting because I've done a couple of coaching sessions about that this week, and I haven't found people to necessarily be pissed, but they are afraid. Because they're looking at it like, okay, I'm making a decision. There's only 3 legacy airlines, right? 4 if you count Southwest in that or not. It depends on who you're talking to, right? And,
Yeah.
and what I mean by that is legacy. There's 3 legacy internationals,
Sure.
4 legacy if you count Southwest in terms of just size.
Yeah, it depends on how
percentage.
you quantify it. Right?
Okay. So people know, or I think most people have accepted at this point, you're probably not jumping legacy to legacy to legacy. That idea of like
anymore.
yeah, people that when they look in their closet, they have a Delta uniform, a United uniform, and an American uniform, and they were all issued within 4 months of each other, right? Those days are pretty well and done. And so what people are concerned about is if they have 2 job offers right now. If they have one, it's straightforward. You're just going to go to whoever offers you the job. But let's say you have American and Delta, or you have United and Delta, or you have United and American. Now they're looking at it as like, okay, whatever I choose, I don't have the chance to go back. I don't have the chance to call them back and go, hey guys, oopsies,
No
no, I
do-overs.
really want to
Yeah.
go here. Yeah. And so there's a lot of pressure because the other difference with the military folks is they're not thinking about having kids. Most of them already have kids. They're not thinking about buying a house. They have 1, maybe 2 of them because they've done moves, right? They're not thinking about getting married, right? They're probably already married. That's not 100% of the case, right?
Sure.
But the consequence of their decision does not just impact them. It impacts a husband or a wife. It impacts 1 or 2 children. It impacts whether or not they can live near in-laws or not, whether they have childcare. Like, there's pretty substantial impacts to them. And so fear typically is the overwhelming emotion that they're experiencing. And the fear is don't F it up. So
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
a 20-something-year-old is just worried they're not progressing fast enough.
I have a question that, like, how do you explain the ramifications of living not where you work and commuting to, like, a lot of the people that have been in the regionals, at some point, if you're at the airlines, very few people have never commuted because they upgraded to captain in some junior base and commuted for a period of time. And I don't think you can appreciate living in base until you have experienced commuting a little bit. But what do you tell military people? They're going to go, they're making their one choice of their forever airline, and that's it. And they're like, yeah, well, my wife's family lives in Poughkeepsie and we're going to move there because, like, how do you quantify the importance of that decision on where you're going to live versus where you're going to work?
So
What
you don't have
metaphors
to-
specifically do you
Yeah.
use, James?
the metaphors don't move to Poughkeepsie. So military, like I said, I'm generalizing here, so it's not true 100% of the time, but for a disproportionate amount of the time, military folks are pretty much moving where they're based, um, unless they have some type of like their husband or wife has a job that they can't relocate for, um, something that's keeping them to where they're at. Like a disproportionate amount of military people are like, hey, look, I'm just going to go move to wherever I'm based. For the percentage of military people that are not going to move where they're based, or just regular regional pilots, or not regional pilots probably isn't a good example, but like career transition pilots, right? People that
Or
haven't been
corporate,
in the airlines, corporate
right?
pilots. There's actually a really simple exercise they can go through, and this is going to sound silly, but you can oversimplify the scheduling to you're either going to start at 6 a.m. or you're going to start at 2 p.m. Would you agree with that, Max?
100%.
Yep.
Okay. So you can go to it's at pilotdomiciles.com, right?
Oh.
And you can pull up a map of the United States, and it will show you all of the bases that every single carrier has. So you can take a look at where you live. You can take a look at what airline you think you want to work for. Let's say it's a New York-based carrier. Let's say you live in Omaha, Nebraska, right? Pull up pilotdomiciles.com. Assume a 6 a.m. start. Go on to FlightAware and go see how many flights there are between Omaha and Newark, or Omaha and JFK. Now, here's the deal. When you go to these big cities like New York, I know Newark and JFK on a map look like they're about 6 miles apart. It's about an hour and a half driving and $20 in tolls, right? So if you're going to United, you're going to Newark, and if you're going to Delta, you're flying into JFK or LaGuardia. By the way, there's no easy way to get from LaGuardia to JFK conveniently. But get on FlightAware and go, oh, if I had to be there by 6 a.m. on Monday, what time would I have to leave Sunday? Now, you might find, I haven't looked up the Omaha JFK city pair, so I don't know, but you may find there's not very many or none at all direct flights between where you live and where you're going. Now you got to figure out, okay, go on to, Google or United Delta American's website and look if you were going to book a ticket. Not that you would pay for it, but what's the city pairing they would give you? Okay? So now then think through, what happens if a snowstorm rolled on through? What happens if there were thunderstorms, right? And what you're going to notice is you're losing a minimum of 24 hours commuting. You could be losing 48 per tour, right? So if you have a 6 a.m. start on a Monday and you end at, let's say, noon or 2 on a Thursday, you're going to lose time on the front end. You'll probably commute home on the back end. But if you have one of those horrible deals where you start at 6 a.m. on Monday, but then your schedule shifts and you don't land till 8 p.m. on Thursday, well, you lost time on the front end and the back end. Now factor in, are you commuting on the airline you work for, or are you commuting on a different airline? Because that goes with the seniority over whether or not can somebody else bump you off of that jump seat or not, right? And then take a look, is it a one-leg or a two-leg commute? Every additional leg you added to that commute, right? You threw another variable for failure. I don't have a good metaphor. I apologize. Birds into the engine? I don't know.
Here's what you got.
More birds.
For every extra leg you have to commute, that's like got to take at least a year off your life in the long run, I would say.
Yeah, that's a great. That's actually just true.
That's pretty. I think that's conservative.
So, I mean, I do the same thing with people that say, hey, they want to fly international. Is I have them pull up FlightAware, and I have them take a look at, okay, where do you think you want to fly? Well, okay, I want to do New York to Rome. Fine, look up the flight. Now what I want you to do is I want you to sit awake and I want you to watch on FlightAware. I want you to track the thing flying over Rome. Well, that's boring. Well, what do you think you're doing in the cockpit?
Get on Flight Sim, and I want you to run this flight.
Yeah.
Serious. And you think it's funny, but
yeah. Guess
what?
what?
Then they have to maintain the sleep schedule.
Take your laptop to a hotel.
Yeah.
Do the flight. Then
And guess what? There's no flights to Rome that leave at 9 a.m.
That's correct. And that's the thing. It's funny how many people go, I want to fly. You'll see I had a post on LinkedIn about this the other day. It's like, I want to fly long haul international. Okay, cool. How do you feel about backside of the clock? Well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do red eyes.
I feel like flying red eyes, so I don't want
That's
to do that.
international flying.
Yeah,
I'm not
exactly.
saying you can't get senior enough to do Brazil,
Yeah.
where, but like you're not starting off. You're not doing 777 domestics. Like,
Yeah.
You're
Exactly.
going to Australia. You're going to
Yeah.
Rome. So, but the point is, you can actually simulate it for a week or 2 weeks. And if you're sitting to yourself going, I wouldn't want to disrupt my schedule for a week to practice this, then guess what? You probably shouldn't do it, because
Dude, I
real
think
life's not going to be better.
The great thing you illustrate is you're like, okay, let's just say it's an extra day away from where you live if you commute per week, per trip, right? It's an extra day. You're either coming in the night before for the early trip, or
Yeah.
you get in too late and you got to
Yep.
spend the night and leave the next day, right? So it's a day. And if you just do the math on that and say, oh, if you're flying 3 days, that's 4 trips a month. That's 4 days
correct.
a month times 12 months. It's 4. Are you willing to spend 48 days more away from your house than you already have to? This is in addition to
That's correct.
your job to live there. Like, that's the question. And not to, like, it's just, oh man, it just can't be. I just don't understand how you can. It's hard to make somebody understand the impact of it until you do it. Like, dude,
That's
my
why you
trip
watch
this
the
week,
Flight on FlightAware and pull out Flight Sim.
yeah, those are great. Those are great
I mean,
ideas, because
yeah.
my trip ended this week in Las Vegas with a deadhead home, which I have a confirmed seat, right? And we get in, and I'm like, oh, this is so annoying. And then the flight's delayed an hour. I was just so pissed, just in the airport, just pissed.
Yeah.
And
Dude,
I'm like, this is not even a big deal, but I'm just so put out by this. It was just, I'm like, I guess I told my wife when I got in, I'm calling her while I'm walking to my truck. I'm like, it was a great, just little teeny, just the smallest piece of commuting, even though it wasn't even really commuting. Just remind me how happy I am to live in where I work.
Dude, I was flying back from California last week, and they don't do Columbus direct LAX, so I had to do a stopover in Denver. We're sitting at the gate. Our gate's right up against the de-ice pad. As we're sitting there, 777 goes and makes the turn to pull into the pad, blows snow all over the airplane. 45-minute delay.
Boom.
These are the things people think commuting, everything's going to go the way it's supposed to go. Like, the amount of things that go wrong when you're commuting, right? Oh, hey, you know what? Man, there's an armrest broken on the seat, and we didn't realize that till this late. So you're right, there are enough seats for you, but we're MELing that, and we're going to put a passenger in your seat, and you're getting off.
Or you're so stressed.
Oh,
It's just,
yeah.
it's
Weight
just
and
a thing.
balance. Sorry, we can't. Yeah, no, we got the seats, but we can't, Oh, hey, we're like, non-revving is like planning a cross-country drive with children and thinking it's going to go well. Like, how many bathroom stops and I want a hamburger do you think you're
Yeah.
going to get? Like,
This is going to be so much fun.
yeah, but you're driving you're doing a cross-country road
James
trip
doesn't
with
even
2
have
kids.
kids either.
I know, yeah. You jacked them up on sugar, right? And you didn't plan what hotels you were going to stay in or where you were going to stop. That's commuting.
I
Yeah.
love it.
I'm just curious, because it's really hard to get the point across of the impact on your life if you've never done it. Like, there's nothing that substitutes doing that gig.
Practice. I know you were kind of joking earlier, but it's not wrong, man. You can sit on Flight Sim.
Well,
And-
for international, but I'm just saying, yeah, but you make a good point. Like, you really have to try and get the point across. You have to sit down and be like, look, here's the reality of what your situation is going to be like in numbers if you choose to do this.
But at 2 a.m, you're sitting at your computer staring at a screen. Well, what the hell do you think the cockpit is? Like, so I'll tell you what, take your computer and bump it up against your window and open up the blinds so you can see out. Like, oh, it's dark out there. You can't see anything. That is correct. You're looking
It's
at a
so
parking
funny.
lot. That's called the Atlantic Ocean. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's what it is. And so you got to ask yourself, because when you're in your 20s, it sounds really, really cool. But when you get married, have kids, you've got a social network, you've got a home. Congratulations, you're making all that money. You got this beautiful house and a boat that you're not in. And I get it. There's going to be plenty of guys who are going to go, hey, dude, let me show you my trips for the month international. I only did 2 of them. And there are people where their body clock, it works for them. But for a lot of people, there is a difference between physical time you are present in your home and quality time where you're actually able to mentally process and be present and do things. They're different.
Yeah,
1,000%.
It's amazing how much stuff you learn that you didn't really considered when you were like, me coming to Southwest was primarily driven by the fact that I wanted to remain living in Phoenix, and American wasn't a great option in Phoenix, so here I am. But the type of flying we do is so much more compatible with me personally. Like, dude, I love to fly short legs during the day. I'm a morning person. I don't like to fly late at night. A backside of the clock would absolutely kill me. And so this has ended up working out, and I don't like to be gone for very long. So this has actually worked out really great. But by a lot of it was just dumb luck. And so I think, through the show, it's really helpful to try and illustrate some of these things that you don't consider when you do accept that job that is going to be likely your last job for your whole life. And you're going to be there a very long time. And so it's important to think about these things, dude, and be honest with yourself. Because the glory of anything wears off real quick, just like a new car or whatever. And then you're left with the rest. And so the stuff is important to try and quantify for people.
When I shifted to daytime only flying, morning starts, I am 60 pounds lighter than I was. I was 270 pounds of my height. As of today, because we're coming off Christmas, I'm 210. I'll be at 200 in a month. Right?
Because you're sick or because
No, because I'm stopping eating all the friggin' baked goods. But all kidding aside, I'm 60 pounds lighter than I was at my height. Just because I'm cooking my meals that I'm taking with me. I do morning starts. I work Monday through Friday. I don't shift time zones. I don't know how many years, all kidding aside, how many years do you think I gained by being 60 pounds lighter?
Yeah. Oh, that stuff is all becomes hugely impactful. You just do not realize it until you're already there most of the time. You just can't, you just don't consider those things. And that's what I mean. For me, I feel like I really stumbled on something by one facet that I focused on that has really worked out good for me. And it's very compatible with who I am and how I operate. And it's, I'm very fortunate for that. And it's important to try and illustrate those things for other people because, some people I think are totally the opposite and are stuck doing something that they really doesn't work with them. And it will slowly kill you. I mean, that's for real.
Money does not buy your kids liking you.
Dude. It's just all this stuff. Like being there for watching your kids succeed in sports is the best. And if to miss that would kill me. I would give up a lot. And I will give up. I intend to give up a lot to be able to do that. That is important. I will not upgrade to captain and be gone every weekend and miss all of that stuff. I just won't do it. It's not worth it. It's not important enough to me. Some people it is. And there's a whole, I don't know, there's a lot. I mean, we have a thing to talk about the addiction to premium flying. That's a thing I've come to realize. That is a real thing. A real thing that has actually significantly impacted people's lives.
Yeah, it's funny because everyone's chasing, but when they get there, they start to realize
for what?
Oh, well, when the reality sinks in and they get there, a lot more people than you realize don't make the choices to progress as fast as they can because it comes at a pretty substantial cost. And that's tough to explain until you get the opportunity to do it.
Yeah. It's another thing that I think a lot of pilots should read that get caught up in that is a book called Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. You ever heard of that?
Oh, I was talking to a buddy about that the other day. Yeah.
That's a very powerful book. Everybody should read that. If you really want to try and quantify the carrot that you're chasing constantly.
If you're having trouble offloading that cash, I give you my bank account number. You just transfer that over.
Yeah. Got it. It is, I'll tell you, James, one of the main reasons, my experience at the airlines, I just looked at the captains that I flew with. And at the time, the career had stagnated. So I was flying with a lot of guys in their 60s, even at the regionals or when I was commuting. And when I looked at the captains and I saw where they were at, 60, 70% of the people, I was like, that is not the life that I want to have when I'm in my 60s. I've been divorced. All I can talk about is my boat or whatever. And I just looked at it. I'm like, the odds of this going well for me in this path, for me personally, it's not good. I'm seeing the product of what we got. And by the way, I'm looking at these guys and I don't know how much longer, how many of these dudes are going to make it to 70? You know?
Dude, it's
Like,
crazy.
The flying has to fit your lifestyle.
Yeah.
In the beginning, when you're trying to get there, your lifestyle
Yeah.
fits the flying.
Yeah.
But if you are expecting that for the remainder of your career that's going to happen, it's going to be a disaster. When you realize, okay, hey, look, there's spurts where my lifestyle, where I'm going to fit my lifestyle around the flying, but you're doing that for the objective of getting flying that fits around your lifestyle.
Yeah.
That's the end goal for everybody. And I know people, people will sit there and they're like, well, but I can make more money if I go here. Okay, you're making $350,000 a year. Is 375,000 or 400,000 going to make a difference? No, it's not. It isn't.
But it seems like it is when you're making $40,000 a year. That seems like a big deal.
Well, the difference between 50,000 and 100,000, which is a $50,000 difference, is huge. The difference between 350 and 400, it's an outboard motor. I mean, it's not that big of a deal.
We got deep today.
It is. It's a great.
Yeah.
Sometimes though, it's a really great job, but you have to let it be. That's the thing. You have to not stand in your own way of ruining your
which is
your life.
why we spend so much time on strategy with people. It's why we spend so much time not talking just to them, but having their husbands and wives on the phone call. It's this stuff that we're talking about right now. It's gray. It's not black and white. And I'm constantly asking questions and pushing buttons to get down to what the actual driving motivators are. Because for most people, because they haven't been there yet, they can't see it. So we're trying to get them on a path to where they want to go, that when they get there, they look backwards and they go, oh, that's why we did what we did. That is correct.
Yeah. And I can't think of a more important way to spend your time and energy and money, like of planning a strategy for something that will literally affect you for the rest of your life. Meaning, like, if you beat yourself
and
up
your
even
kids.
after you retire, you're going to be, everything. So it's important. Some of us are fortunate enough, I think, to stumble on the right path without having planned it out. And I'm sure there's a lot that are not as fortunate. And so, it behooves you to spend some time to figure that out and consider all these variables we talk about.
Yeah, well, I learned this by not being lucky and making a consecutive series of horrible life choices and learning from them. Right?
But now look at you with your turtleneck and just stone wall.
Well, but like a great example, I've commuted for 20 years of my life. I don't get that time back. Right? So when I talk about commuting, it's not from a book. I've done driving commutes. I've done flying commutes. I've done single leg commutes. I've done multiple leg commute. Like, I've got the scars on my back on why the commuting, where it is and isn't a good idea.
And his neck. That's why he wears the turtleneck.
That's why I wear the turtleneck. It's the cover.
It's the part where he tried to cut his jugular that one night in the hotel in upstate New York in January.
Sorry, we're weight restricted. We can't get you on the jump seat, sir.
Yeah. That's why I lost the 60 pounds, was to get on the jump seat. Tired of getting kicked off.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, we can't. God. Oh, so traumatic. Man. Well, that is a good summary here, James. We promised a couple of people on social media we do a couple rapid fire questions with you. So we'll get you out on this on a few of these, and then folks will be able to direct you your information so that the people can get you one-on-one and actually talk a little bit about their situation and get some custom strategy. But let's just do some general rapid fire stuff. I'm going to pull it up. I had it 10 seconds ago. And now here it is. Okay. This is the most important one. Best restaurants in Columbus on an overnight.
Quickly.
Tensuke Market, TENSUKE, largest Japanese grocery store in the Midwest. Arch City Tavern, downtown, for the best burgers in town. And Stouff's Coffee for coffee.
Okay.
All right, and you will
see
me at all three of those locations. So
perfect.
If you want some free strategy, you can bump into me
while you're waiting in line for your coffee. Oh, James. Oh, what are the odds?
Yeah, I'm 6'5" with red hair, so it's hard to find me.
Turtleneck. Now, James, is it now a better time to get on with cargo or passenger carriers?
Cargo's in a rough spot right now because of what's going on in the economy. So if you're doing some of the smaller cargo carriers, it's easier. But if you're taking a look at the larger ones, I mean, UPS is doing a very small amount of hiring. FedEx is effectively doing none. So passenger operations, as of today, call me in a week, it could change. But
ACMIs, though, are they still doing well?
Depends on which ones you're talking about.
Right.
So yeah.
do you have a preference on any of the direct pilot programs like United or Frontier? Is there any right now, and we know that they could change, is there any right now where you're like, oh, this one I kind of like?
The American ones don't have contracts, so go American.
There you go. You got one,
I
Max?
think they call theirs a cadet program,
Okay.
if I remember correctly off the top of my head. But look, I like the American ones right now.
Tips for the first type: the Ferrari of the sky, the ERJ 145.
Tips for the first type. Okay. So and this is actually for any type rating. We were joking about this earlier, but this is serious. Get on Microsoft Flight Sim or get on X-Plane, download the airplane, and do basic attitude instrument flying based on the attitude indicator. Learn the pitch attitudes for takeoff, climb, cruise, descent. Engage the autopilot to have it fly on ILS, write down all the pitch attitudes and the airspeeds. Do steep turns. You're not going to do slow flight and stalls, but the ability to show up on day one with the simulator, understanding how to do basic attitude instrument flying is huge. The other thing systems-wise that people have difficulty with are electrics, pneumatics, and hydraulics and fuel. So learn what alternating current is, what is direct current, what is a volt, what is an amp, what is a transformer rectifier, what is an inverter. Go take a look at what ejector pumps are, right? A lot of the stuff you can Google the manuals online, read through the systems. Anytime there's a word there that you don't understand, Google it, YouTube it. There's somebody on there that will explain how that system works for free. So anybody that's going through any type rating, those CFIs that are sitting around the FBO that are bored out of their mind because they've done the 36,000th power off 180, right? Pick an Embraer 170, pick an Embraer 145, pick a CRJ. You can go to Avsoft, and I think it's like 150 or 200 bucks. You can purchase a 1 month access to their systems. You can go to YouTube. There's a video series on there for the Embraer 170. Go watch the videos, man. Get your mind into where you want to go as opposed to where you're currently at. It makes a huge difference when you show up to class.
Really good advice. We've shared that link before for the systems class, and we'll do that again.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, last one. Low time pilot job forecast, like there used to be of the 500-hour total time, 135s like PlaneSense or Tradewind, etc. Is that a thing of the past?
So no. Okay. So the companies that a 500-hour pilot is going to go to are going to be different than the ones they were going to before. So that is different, right? But the reality is there's a lot of these, it's what we were talking about earlier. There's a lot of these jobs where if you're hungry, and you're willing, number one, you're doing the networking, you're staying in touch with them on a routine basis. They know who you are. They know what your face is. You'd be surprised opportunities you can get that other people can't just because they don't want to relocate. I had someone that we were doing networking with here about a month ago, and they had nothing on the horizon, got a conversation started, and the company needed somebody in class inside of 2 weeks, and they didn't even start interviewing yet. That person, just by saying, hey, I will make myself available whenever you need for the interview and I will show up to class, no questions asked, put themselves right at the top of the pile. They're in class right now. They're actually going to be starting sim tomorrow. So when you have lower flight time, who you network with, how you network, and the fact that you're willing to show up when nobody else is are huge differentiators in terms of whether or not you're getting stuff. The other thing is if somebody offers you an opportunity to get right seat in a King Air, I don't care if you can log the flight time or not, take it. Because the thing is, it's putting you around other people and other opportunities will pop up out of that if you know how to leverage it. So I don't care if it's a Pilatus Part 91 and you can't log it. Don't put it in your logbook, but get in the airplane if they'll let you. So eliminate no from your vocabulary unless it's unsafe, illegal, or you have to lie about it.
Your best ability is your availability.
And it is. Think about how many times you've
Nice.
had opportunities or you've been able to give opportunities, and it's just, hey, close proximity.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, grab that line guy. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. We've reached our time. I think we covered it all, James.
We've done it all.
Dude,
We've done it all.
I'm excited.
And here's the best thing. When we call you up here in a couple of months, It'll all be completely different.
It'll all be completely different. Okay, you can dump 80% of what we talked about. Yeah, it's look. That's the thing that folks aren't realizing right now is So the reason why I left flying full time to do this is because the amount of effort and energy that I'm spending or that we're spending on the back end in terms of just keeping up with what's going on and helping people adjust, it's a full-time job.
Yeah.
And so if you think you can do that part-time, good luck. Have fun.
It's kind of like my dad's a big surfer. So I grew up around like him surfing and stuff. You could be like, hey, Tom, I'd love to go surfing next month. You'd be like, okay, well, here's some spots, maybe. But
Yeah.
if you want to go surfing today, here's maybe the good spot. But it's just really tough. Or, hey, what's the weather going to be like in 3 months? I don't know.
Yeah. That's
just
it's
generally.
And that's why we do what we do. It's fun.
Well, we appreciate what you do. I know a lot of folks are excited to chat with you. We'll have all of your contact information in the show notes. They jump on your calendar, and they can start the conversation, start building the strategy, really. I think that's the big takeaway here is it doesn't matter if you have a couple hundred hours or if you've got 5,000 hours. You still have to create a strategy and adjust it to the conditions. So that is why we have the Sherpa, James Onieal.
Thank you for having me, folks.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure, James.
Thanks, James.
I'll have to work on metaphors for next time.
Oh, I can't wait.
If you could just start a book, that would be just jot
This will be
down.
great. Now that you've got more time,
note.
James, the Raven Career T-shirt shop, I think, could be a huge side.
Seriously, we need to sit. Yeah, we're gonna start copyrighting.
Well, yeah, we're gonna have. I'm gonna have ChatGPT draw a dog catching a school bus. It's gonna be unbelievable.
That might be my favorite one. Still,
exactly.
The dog never thought
to get
it was gonna catch the school bus. If you have a good ones you use with your wife too, make sure you write that down. I want to hear it.
Yeah.
Eileen, taking the trash out in this winter storm.
Eileen, you're still playing
It's like
golf.
asking
We've
me
switched.
to
We're at
walk on-
pickleball now.
You may be surprised that consistent access to me gets fatiguing.
Yeah.
This doesn't stop. Like when we stop recording, this just keeps going.
Yeah,
It's
this
just
is
not being
actually
recorded
you.
anymore.
This is
me. Yeah.
It's just somebody else. Oh my gosh. That's why he's at the coffee shops and the hamburger place.
Exactly correct. Yeah. That's why I know all the places to eat.
Yeah. It would be great if you went grocery shopping for a couple hours, James.
Yeah. Or like a week.
Oh, I love it. All right. That is going to do it. Appreciate your time, James. Until next time, adios.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
The statements made in this show are our own opinions and do not reflect, nor were they under any direction from any of our employers.